dilemma is, of course, in the forefront, and we're going to crunch the numbers for you now. Let's take a look at how that has happened and what has happened when it comes to the maize farmers and the numbers from 2016, as we'll be showing you right here, because in 2016, 1.6 million bags were imported into the country. In 2017, they were actually 14.7 million bags, and this was due to drought-related deficits. Now we have Ken Gishinga with us in studio, of course, economist, CEO of Mentoria. Thank you for joining us, Ken, for our Week in Perspective. We're going to start off with the talk of maize. Have you been following all this, commotion this week that the maize farmers have been experiencing for the past 9 months?
Absolutely. It's been a crisis in the maize industry. This country produces about 56 million bags of maize every year. Yes. That's a 12% increase from last year. But think about the population of Kenya. That's about 45 million Kenyans. So we are really talking about slightly over one bag per Kenyan per year, which is not enough because we are a growing economy and 75% of this economy is below the 35 years. So definitely production for maize needs to be promoted. And to see what the farmers were saying about not being paid, I think for me that was heartbreaking, because that's the staple food for Kenya. And if those maize farmers are complaining, and they said some very toxic things, last week in front of the Senate. Yes. So I think one of the challenges is, how do we encourage maize farmers to produce more? How do we encourage them to, because if they choose to move away to other products, then we'll definitely have a challenge with food security.
All right, now as we see here on the screen, 1.6 million in 2016, it went up substantially in 2017 for imports, and it was, of course, drought-related deficits. But the drought-related deficits were about 2.4 million bags that were required for import. Now look at how much we imported, 14.7. And actually there was a Ministry of Agriculture report that was tabled in Parliament which projected a shortfall of 5 million bags. However, 5 million, 2.4 is still a far cry from the 14.7 million bags we saw imported, and this importation period was actually supposed to be till August 2017, but we saw it continue to the end of the year, and we ended up actually spending imports on maize worth 40.3 billion. A massive amount compared to especially 2016, where maize imported was worth 3.6 billion. And that's the increase is definitely something massive if we look at it here. But Ken, who should have been responsible for regulating this?
Okay, so first of all, there are two issues at play.
Yes.
There's a climatic problem that faces Kenya every 5 years. If you look at the last 40, 50 years, you can be sure that every 5 years, the country is expected to have a drought, which is unfortunate. But the fact that we have that kind of data means that the Ministry of Planning should be able to forecast what the supply of maize should be, so that we don't get to a point where we are food short and we are importing such big amounts. Then the other issue is the issue of cartels, because it's been said that cartels take advantage of periods, especially political years, when there's a maize shortage, they'll blame the droughts. But you find people already have ordered from Brazil, from Mexico, so I think those two issues at play. But the fact that climatic forecasting is a science that has come a long way. We know every 5 years we should expect a drought. So I don't see why the Ministry of Planning should not be able to put that into the pricing so that we never have shocks, and I think that's one of the things that they have to be challenged.
So planning ourselves, of course, because we know the patterns at this point. Now, the money that was set aside to pay maize farmers was in our budget, but the NCPB lies with traders to embezzle these funds. I warn them, the full arm of the law will see that they pay for their corrupt actions. This was the president talking yesterday at the International ASK Trade Fair, and he asked dealers, millers to reduce maize prices, give consumers a reprieve, and also today, word is from Eldoret that the farmers who delivered less than 2,000 bags to the NCPB have received money. So after a 9-month wait, they're getting a little now. Of course, this week it was supposed to be on Monday after the 1.4 billion was already released for the farmers. But it's Friday and there is some progress as we see. But this year, as you said earlier, maize production is up by 12% to 56 million bags. What kind of measures do you think can be put in place to ensure the demand-supply chain is balanced and, all parties benefit? It's seamless.
Well, I attended the Nairobi International Trade Fair and the theme for this year was innovation.
Yes,
how
and
to
technology.
use and technology in agriculture. And I think that needs to be the big theme. So in as much as food security is part of the 4-pillar agenda the president has, we need to think of what are the innovative interventions that we can help farmers to be able to produce more. Because right now, all we're doing is doing negative things against the farmer, not paying him on time, not providing enough fertilizer. So we need to change the conversation. How do we support the farmer with insight, with innovation, with technology? And there's some very great work happening in that space, but it doesn't get the kind of coverage that it deserves. And I think it needs to get into the mainstream only by understanding the maize farmer and helping him think through the next 10 years. Will he have enough confidence to be able to continue? Otherwise, he'll just say, I might as well put this real piece of fun and build a mall and build a house and go into real estate, which is bad for the country because that's the food basket of the country. It means we end up importing more if the maize farmers of this country give up. So I think part of it has to be encouraging the farmer, providing mentorship services, providing access to innovation. Cambry, Curry, all this, Curry, these are companies that have a lot of research on what can be done. Whether it's armyworms that are coming to destroy, they can provide solutions to kill. So I think the farmers needs to feel that they are protected by the government, that the government is doing everything within its means to help them have a sustainable livelihood. Unless they get that feeling, then see what's happened in other counties like Kiambu, where people just decide, it's time to do away with coffee and let me go into real estate.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ken Gishinga. Now, just to wrap up, of course, the president did say some